Welcome everyone to the Borough of Swissvale Council agenda for August 30th, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Let's go through our roll call. Miss Alfonso Wells.
Present.
Mr. Miser.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Mr. Quinn.
Here.
Miss Scales is unavailable tonight, as well as Miss Stribling is also unavailable. Mayor Swartzwelder.
Here.
And I am likewise here. Let's move on to public comment. We have one public comment for this evening. Gib Miller, representing SEDCO, to talk about the Church Street Parklet.
Good evening, everybody. Okay, we've talked about this in the past a good bit. Obviously, the parklet, once the building was torn down, things were started in like 2018 to fix it up. It kind of got sidelined by COVID. So at this point, we have a partially completed park. Borough has been doing a good job of keeping the lot mowed and has done some improvements like the fence along the one side and the rock bed in the sunflower garden. But we kind of came to the conclusion. SEDCO's been pushing, I guess, most of this year to come up with plans for completing it. So we've kind of tried a couple different things. We did have a meeting in July with Grounded Strategies and several other people. I know Sarah was there, Rotary, a few other people. We all kind of talked about potentials for the lot, kind of understood some of the limitations also. The Grounded Strategies didn't really work out because their business plan is they will get community involvement for organizations, but at a fee. And it just what they wanted to contract for just was a bit too much for what was worthwhile for this project. So anyways, what SEDCO tried to do in lieu of that is during the Juneteenth celebration and during the 125th at our SEDCO booth, we brought plans, some other, show and tell things about the park, and tried to engage the community with thoughts they had for it. So to try to get some buy-in for what would people like to see there. A lot of the things were brought up, or things have been brought up for a lot of other areas in the borough. Things like a dog park, flower gardens, Veterans Memorial Park, putting a little gazebo or covered area for seating. There's several things like that. But again, with the meeting we had in July and with some more looks at the site, there's a couple things that really are kind of primary. One, there is no parking near it, really. It's a very loud site. Between the buses, the trains, and the traffic, it is just, basically, it's not the kind of park where you can sit and read a book, or it's not a tranquil kind of park. The people talked about adding more flower gardens, and we kind of were going, unless some community group steps up to want to maintain that, it's really not a good idea to get into something like that. So basically, and also we had discussed both at the Borough Building, Memorial, the one that's at the Borough Building, and we had talked with Kate at the library, and their plans are, just like the Borough Building, you're planning to keep that memorial with the new building. The library also, in their planning, intends to keep those two memorials at the library. So we kind of, shut that one off. So basically what we came up with is that the original plans for the park that were put together by Rotary pretty much had a path bisecting the lot, had the greenery that's there, had the trees obviously that are in, and then a few benches, garbage cans, and like a dog waste station. the more we've looked at it and, talked to people, that probably really is about the best viable option for that area. The one thing that had been in the plans previously was to put one of the war memorials in kind of the back corner. What SEDCO's looking to do in the future is possibly discussing it with Rivers of Steel or another artist to put an art installation potentially in that corner. But to just kind of itemize, there's just a couple of things. We had sent a letter for council and for administration. And I guess the kind of highlights were we got to put a sidewalk across the park, like the original intent. We should put the benches and garbage cans and the dog waste station is still around into the park. Really looked at it and said, with those uses, it probably doesn't make any sense to actually doing hard wiring of electricity, because they did just put a new LED street light on the corner. It's actually pretty reasonably lit. That if anything, we could probably think about just solar lights, path lights or something like that. The couple things we were looking to do just to kind of improve the maintenance over in the future is the elm tree that's in the middle. It needs to have some kind of isolation from the path because the roots are kind of getting trampled and it's not going to do well. So we were thinking we should probably put just a small bed, kind of like where the sunflower garden is, with maybe like a short paver wall and just a little bit more dirt in it. And then the path could somehow work around that center tree. The other thing we were looking at is the trees that are up on the hill that are farther down Church. They all have separate little mulch beds that are always getting weedy. It might make sense to take all the grass all within those trees and basically just mulch it as one big bed to also make it easier to mow. The only other two, again, we're talking about trying to save the space in the back corner for an art installation of some sort. And we would obviously work with council and whatever we plan to look into to do that. And the only other concern we had was the sunflower garden that's there right now. We probably ought to look at relocating it slightly, because right now, if you're on either Church Street or Braddock at the stoplight, it kind of, especially with the taller plants, it blocks the view of the crosswalks. So safety-wise, it probably would be a good idea to at least move it slightly out so it's out of the way. So anyways, we put that all together in a letter that we sent to you. That is kind of our input. We had discussed this at our SEDCO meeting on Monday, and Deneen was going to talk to George Gatos about getting an idea of what a sidewalk would cost, so we can provide you some kind of input as to what this whole what finishing this project would probably look like dollar wise. We would be willing to try to, for some of the other like the mulch pits and things like that, organizing volunteers to do a lot of that work. So
Gib, thank you for those comments. Just so you know, what you had sent to the admin, to Greg and myself, I circulated to the rest of council yesterday, so they received the sketch and your bullet points. Just also for some additional information, Mr. Batchy had put together a kind of a cost proposal last year that he kind of just tweaked a little bit and resent out. And so I'm just going to throw this out there that he said that it was probably, give or take, of course, about $35,000, roughly speaking. And so I just want to pledge right now of the, we talked a month and a half ago about ARPA allocations. I'm willing to take 5,000 out of kind of what I have allocated to see this park finished, because I'd love to see it finished. And I mean, I don't know if there's any other council members that feel similarly, but I see I see a hand raised there. I feel like an auctioneer.
Yes.
Can I get two? Can I get? So anyway, if council members feel that way, I mean, I'd love to see us pool some of those funds together to get this park done. $35,000 definitely seems reasonable in there. So, Mr. Miller, thank you so much for the comments and the hard work that you and SEDCO have put into kind of keeping our feet warmed in this process. You haven't really put it to the fire yet, but keeping it warm so that we know what's going on and are can finally complete this after, like you said, 4 or 5 years. So thanks so much.
Oh, I
Just
thank you, Gib. Sorry, I'll talk after everybody finishes.
Just real quick. I did want to note, based on Gibbs' comments about not necessarily doing the electrical portion of the parklet due to the LED light that's currently in place, that would reduce the estimate Mr. Batchy sent over by around over $11,000. It would bring it down closer to $24,000. So just wanted to note that.
So we only need 4 more pledges of $5,000.
And you don't have to do that right now. You
I know.
can do that offline too. So.
Well,
You need Jerry Lewis and a big board. Anyway.
Well, I appreciate, if you are able to get that together, it would really be good to see that thing finally finished, because it is really visible in the community. So, and like I said, we will keep you informed about when we're talking to, say, Rivers of Steel or anyone else about a potential art installation, about what we find out about that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say thank you so much, Gib. I know you and SEDCO really put a lot of energy into trying to figure out how to really work that parklet. I really love the idea of an artist installation. I think that would be something that would really pop in our neighborhood, is something that we need, and it would kind of draw together some of the other murals that we have kind of in our neighborhood. In addition, I also like that idea. I mean, one of the things in terms of money is you can bring in the business community by selling a brick, right? Those bricks always work, right? You can sell a brick, and it could be the brick that surrounds the mulch garden or whatever, I mean, just a little idea on that one. And then, some people, as myself, I can read through any circumstance. If I happen to sit in the park, I'm not sitting outside anymore right now because of the spotted lanternflies. But if we were in circumstances where I would not be attacked, they don't bite or anything, but I don't have them flying at me, I would love to just sit down and do that. And we could also do one of those little little technology things where you put up little QR codes in different places, and then the kids can learn about the history of Swissvale as they go through. I always think that's a great little thing. And there are lots of little parts of Swissvale, just lots of little bits and pieces of history that I'm sure that, I think one of the things about the parklet is you have to reconceptualize how we use space that we think of as empty, right? And so I like the fact that there's not a lot of stuff in there. I do agree with the idea with the sunflowers. They do block kind of the view, but I hope that the sunflowers per se stay in the area, because it's really pretty to look at it, especially in that area where you have the trains and it's very concrete looking, to have that little spot of flowers and a little something. It really gives the urban dweller a little bit of peace of mind to have that. It always does. So I just wanted to thank you, and I'll be talking to you at some point later about some of those things.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you much.
All right, let's move on to our agenda. Agenda items. This is category 4. Item A, discuss awarding a contract for accessible ramp construction. Mr. Batchy.
Thanks, sir. 2 years ago, we applied for funding through the Turtle Creek COG for a grant to install some handicap accessible ramps in between the borough building site and the fire department and DPW site. It was finally awarded earlier this year, and the contracts were released by the county. It was originally a $20,000 grant. it has gone up to $28,000 because they have some extra funding, 28,018 total. When we did a project similar to this 3 years ago, the ramps were $2,800 each. Cost of the concrete has gone up significantly. It's now $6,000 on average. So the total bid cost, I think, was $54,500. And the way the bid spec is written, we can pick and choose which ones we want to do. So I would recommend awarding a contract to El Grande Industries in the amount of $30,000 to do ramps 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the bid documents. And then ramp number 2, we can put in with the LSA grant that we received from Senator Costa. And ramps 7 and 8, we can include in a future grant application, which I will discuss under item E, 4E tonight. So, but I would recommend we award this to El Grande Industries, and our share would be $2,000.
Thank you, Mr. Batchey. Any questions, comments, deliberation on this?
I like our share.
Yes, me too.
It's the way to do it. All right, let's move on to item B, discuss a contract for asbestos abatement inspection. Mr. Batchey, we're going to be going to you a lot tonight.
So the borough building, of course, as you know, the demolition contract has been awarded. A large part of that is the abatement of asbestos in the floors, walls, ceilings, and some pipe wrap. We are required by DEP and by the county health department to have an asbestos abatement inspector on site at all times. While this is being completed, Skelly and Loy completed the asbestos study as a subcontractor to LSSE Engineering. I would recommend that we award a contract to Skelly and Loy for the inspection. That way there's not if there's stuff that was missed, we don't have two different engineering firms pointing the finger at one another. And I sent a proposal out to everyone. It's an $18,000 contract, and they will certify that all asbestos has been removed and properly disposed of in a qualified landfill that accepts asbestos. And they will take care of all the sampling, air quality sampling every day, air monitoring, everything that's necessary to satisfy the county health department.
Thank you, Mr. Batchey. Any questions, comments, deliberation on this agenda item? All right, let's move on to item C, discuss $10,000 grant to Swissvale Food Pantry from ARPA funds. And I mean, just for true clarity's sake, it's $10,000, $10,018.55. So just a hair over. I'll just run with this one. So a month and a half ago, we approved the policy to disperse some of these ARPA funds. I have worked close with the food pantry for the past 2 years and see the work that they do for the community. And so wanted to provide some resources for them. So they put a proposal together for me of $10,000, how they would spend $10,000 on some new equipment, computer, 2 refrigerators, 2 commercial freezers, floor cleaners, some other subscriptions that they need to have, some carts for the residents themselves. And so that has been kind of the way in which this process seems to be working out is that was sent to Finance Committee via email. As long as there's no, glaring issues, Finance Committee kind of gave their approval. And as Mr. Price requested a month and a half ago when we discussed this, we wanted to bring it to council to kind of get that last seal of approval before any checks are written. And we would ask Ms. Ansel to update the website to kind of keep a rolling tabulation of how these funds are being used. So I don't know if anyone has any question about either A, the process, or B, the specific grant for the food pantry. Go ahead, Mr. Price.
I was just wondering, I completely support the food pantry. The only thing I was wondering about is that list has the purchase of a lot of, big, heavy things, double door refrigerators and things. And I know the building is up for sale right now, and I wasn't really sure, what they're going to do with this stuff if they have to move in a month or two.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to that. There is some uncertainty with that. I don't know if they would purchase these right out of the gate or if they would kind of hold on to it just, for a couple months until that is resolved. I do know that there are a number of other locations that they have been looking at. I'll actually be with them next Wednesday and Thursday, and so I'll probably get an on-the-ground update on that particular question for it. So, I mean, it's a good observation. It does seem silly to put something in a building that, you're going to have to move, and if you don't know where you're going to be moving that to. So duly noted.
Oh,
Anything else? Go ahead,
would-
Ms. Alfonso Wells.
I would just say that is a really good observation. I would also say that probably the food pantry, regardless of whether they're in that building, would still be in Swissvale. So it would hopefully, I think the point is to, they're trying to serve Swissvale residents and other people who are in need that can get to Swissvale, right? So I would hope that, and I think that the idea would be that that type of equipment would go with the pantry as an organization that is set up to serve Swissvale. I don't know, but that's what I'm thinking. And I assume that they're looking for physical places still in Swissvale. So the equipment, they still will need the equipment. So that equipment will go wherever the pantry goes, I assume. I don't know.
You're absolutely right on all those counts. I mean, they will be staying in Swissvale. They are looking at properties in Swissvale, or even seeing if someone buys the property, would they be able to stay there for a couple of years? There's a number of those factors that are in the air. I don't want to get too much and, reveal too much of their business. That's not my place here tonight, but I mean, you're absolutely right that the ownership of this would be the food pantry. And if they do move locations to somewhere else in Swissvale, would go with them, just to confirm that. All right, well, let's move on to item D then. Discuss borough building financing. Mr. Batchy.
So for the last several months, we have been discussing, or we've placed it on the agenda for discussion and then took it off the agenda for various reasons for the borough building financing. The biggest issue was the fact that the initial loan agreement that we agreed to with First Commonwealth Bank was a 15-year loan with a balloon payment after 15 years, where basically we would have had to refinance the balance, but it was amortized over 30 years to keep the payments lower. When the note council took this to DCED as required, DCED rejected it because they don't allow balloon payments. So we've been back to the drawing board with First Commonwealth a number of times since then. And First Commonwealth's position was they wouldn't go more than 20 years on a straight amortization. After a lot of arm bending and talking and pleading, they agreed to a 25-year amortization, which brings the payments to if we end up after the RCAP grant financing $5 million, the payments will be $356,000 annually. Our tax increase brings in $315,000. And we also paid off a loan this year, the PIB loan from 2012 of $76,000 annually. So we have about $380,000 available toward the borrowing. So the offer expires on September 30th. So we do need to take action if we want to use First Commonwealth funds at next week's meeting. The ordinance has been advertised by the Note Council, Ditka and Associates, and everything is in order at this point to move forward. The interest rate is still 5.1%, which they agreed to last October when they quoted this. Commercial interest rates are over 7% now. So if we do go back out on the market to look for a loan somewhere else, maybe to get a longer term, we'll probably be paying over 7%. So it's really not going to help our payments because we'd just be paying a higher interest rate for a longer term and the same payments. So I would recommend that we place this on the agenda for approval next week of an ordinance to approve the borrowing as per the DCD requirements for First Commonwealth Bank.
Thank you, Mr. Batchy. Any comments, questions, deliberation on this agenda item? All right, we'll keep moving. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that, yeah, that moving on this quicker rather than later is probably best. Although they did have I just saw in the news today that they're I think the feds or someone is thinking about a requirement to make banks actually take on more loans. So I thought that was an interesting little twist in the plot. But yes, we need to get this done so that we can look at the building of our borough building while we still have that. Wow, what a sweet rate, right? A year or so ago, 5% would have seemed like, oh, that's just too high. Now we're just like, yeah, let's get that sweet spot right now while we can.
Absolutely true. It's the 3.99 rate of 5 years ago.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions? Ready to move on? Item E, discuss resolutions for various grant applications. Mr.
A
Batch.
couple different grant programs coming up here in the next month to 1 to 3 months. And the two main ones I wanted to look at applying to are the Community Development Block Grant Fund. As I said earlier, with the grant from 2 years ago, the cost of the ramps has gone up significantly. So, and we can move one into the LSA grant that we already have. But the other two, which are along Palmer Street, Palmer at Irvine and Irvine at McCaig, I'd like to apply for another grant through the COG for these, and we would also go down Irvine Street and then out onto Monongahela and start repairing these handicap ramps or replacing them that are damaged, or some of them aren't even there where there's crosswalks. There's a few places that don't have a ramp, so wanted to try to start replacing those. We've done that on the Noble Street side, Rosalind Noble, and Washington Street. So I'd like to move to the other side of the business district now, where there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, people in wheelchairs, and others with mobility issues, to try to replace these ramps. So we would be looking to apply for around $30,000 to $35,000 worth of work, because the grant will be, this is a grant that every 2 to 3 years we get from the COG. It's basically an entitlement grant, but it's around $28,000 to $30,000 for next year. The second thing I'd like to apply for is, last year we applied for sanitary sewer project on Schley Avenue. We applied to both the Pennsylvania Small Sewer and Water Grant Program and also to the CDBG program. The Small Sewer and Water have not been awarded yet, but the CDBG grant was not funded last year. So a lot of times when you reapply, it makes them more fundable, because they see the need there because you're continually applying. And the condition of that sanitary sewer line did not get any better since last year. So those two. And then we have another grant program, which is the local share account, which this is what's funding the paving, the $600,000 that's from Senator Costa for paving and handicap ramps and such over in the Woodstock Avenue area, and also paving Rosalind Street, Noble Street, and a few other streets around there. The first project I'd like to propose is that I've discussed this with a number of you before and with the DPW committee, is that, we do own the Wilkins School Community Center, and there's a lot of improvements that are needed up there. They've talked to Senator Costa about this, but they're not an eligible applicant. The borough is. We would look at replacing all the sidewalks around the building on all three sides, on South Braddock Avenue, Charleston Avenue, and Milton Avenue. Installing a couple EV chargers on Milton Avenue, installing an elevator inside the building. And from talking to Nicole, who's the president of the board at the community center, there's a host of other things inside, such as a new kitchen and some other spaces that they would like to reuse and revitalize. So there was a lot of money. This is from the gambling money, municipality shares. There's a lot of money available last year and a lot of money doled out. So I'd like to try to get in, get something toward that community center. The last thing is we've talked about numerous times about traffic calming, and that was deferred to the DPW committee. The committee met last Friday, and we discussed potentially applying for an LSA grant to do a study of where traffic calming measures are necessary in the borough, and what types of traffic calming we should implement. and then use the remainder of the funds for actual implementation. So I would suggest we apply for $250,000 to $300,000, spend $25,000 to $30,000 on a study, and then spend another $250,000 on actual implementation. Because believe it or not, one speed hump will cost you about $15,000 to $20,000. So there, it's not just an easy project to throw some asphalt down, because PennDOT has some pretty rigid criteria for doing that now. So, but those are 4 things I'd like to have put on the agenda for resolutions for next week. The CDBG are due, the pre-applications are due in September. The LSAs are due in November, but then would have the resolutions done already.
Thank you so much, Mr. Batchy. As we were going through this, I was just thinking about how grateful I am of your hard work of getting grant funding, which funds a lot of different things that our borough, so that our borough can do things that we wouldn't normally be able to afford. So I really appreciate your hard work in this. I'll open it up if anyone else has comments, questions, or deliberations.
I just had a question about I'm glad we're fixing the sidewalks over there, but is it possible to fix the street too? I mean, my goodness, sometimes you go over there and you can tank out on your car.
Where are you talking about?
Right there by the Wilkins Community Center. The street is, there's no way to say it's a very uneven, rough, and tumble type of road. Let us put it that way.
I don't know that we could do it with this application, because this application we're trying to keep it to the school, because with just what we discussed, we're looking at $600,000 to $700,000 worth of work. But we could look for funding, for other repairs, for those brick roads at some point.
Yeah, eventually, hopefully we can do that. Because anytime you go in the back area over there, and that's Josh's area, anytime you go back over there, I like to, avoid traffic and go back there, or meet with friends that I have back there. And it is like rough.
I was going to say, be careful what you say about the brick roads back here. They are
you don't need traffic calming. You don't need traffic calming, because believe me, those bricks calm the traffic. Because if it doesn't, you're going to bottom out.
My previous street from the water, it actually was like a slalom course. So it actually felt like you were going down ski slalom as you went down the hill. So yes, it's very effective at keeping traffic slow.
Yeah, built-in traffic calming.
It is.
When I ran for council, I promised Rick Seebeck with my life that I would protect those brick streets during my term.
So what I'm hearing is term's almost up. So next year we pave. Just a joke. Just a joke. Not serious in the slightest. All right. You all ready to keep going?
Yep.
All right. Let's move on to item F, discuss an ordinance prohibiting parking in EV charging spaces. Mr. Batch, would this be you or Mr. McTiernan?
I'll take care of it. Okay. As everybody's aware that, we're installing the EV charging stations on Aurelia Street by the Dixon Field. And in order to make this work properly, we need to have an ordinance in place to prohibit parking in those spaces by other than EV vehicles, because then it would discourage people with the electric vehicles from coming there to charge if there's never any spaces open. Mr. McTiernan's office is drafting the ordinance. He stated that we would have a copy hopefully by Friday. We talked today about it. And I do have the advertisement was placed so that we can adopt it next week if that's your wishes. But basically it would stipulate that you can only park there while you're charging your electric vehicle, and for no more than 15 minutes afterwards. And if you don't move the vehicle, there's a $50 fine. And also if it's a non-EV park there, it's a $50 fine for non-compliance.
Is there an exception for if there is a game going on at the time and parents are trying to park as close as possible to see the games that would take place in the field?
We hadn't proposed that, but it would also be good to keep those EV spaces open so people coming to the game that have EVs can charge them while they're there.
And I'll say that if they're coming to a game at Dixon, there is ample parking both in the side lot and the back lots. So there should be parking that those 5 spots shouldn't be make it or break it for folks, I would say.
Well, I would just hope that if someone during a game happened to see a car there, that's not the time that they would say, let's get it, right? I mean, because you can wait a couple of hours and the space would literally clear up because nobody is over there ever, which makes it a good spot for charging.
Would there be any sort of follow-up for this? So like $50 fine, what happens if the car is there a week? Is it just the $50 fine, or is there going to be a towing that happens if a car remains there for too long?
That's up to council if you want to tow also, but one of the things I would suggest, if there's that to be ticketed daily, street sweeper tickets, we put tickets on windshields of cars every week, and sometimes there's 3 and 4 tickets already on there. So yeah, I would think it's a good idea to have a towing clause there, because you may get some person that just wants to leave the car there and say, I'm not paying the fine. I'm not moving the car.
Mr. Miser, when we issue parking tickets now, it's once every 24 hours.
Okay.
So that's the standard way we do it with parking tickets.
I think someone's trying to enter the room, just to let everybody know so they can be let in.
I was just going to say, my only concern is this is, out of all the parking spots in Swissvale, we have 5 EV spots. And so if somebody remains parked there for day after day after day after day, I would be in favor of having some sort of tow clause where if they've been there more than a week, that the vehicle would be towed, just so we aren't clogging up those spots with people who, as Mr. Batchy mentioned, with the street sweeper, they just let the tickets stack up on their windshield and don't care. I think we need to have some mechanism that keeps those spots open for EV vehicles.
I'll second that, Josh.
Yeah, I agree too. Mr. McTiernan, you got your hand up.
Sorry. No, I was going to just ask that. I mean, whether you wanted to try it on an experimental basis without it or make it a more long-term remedy. So what I'm hearing from council is that you would like to have a towing provision, but maybe after so many consecutive tickets are issued for so many consecutive days. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Alfonso Wells.
I would say we want to be very careful because it seems like a little strange equity issue that for the EV cars, if anyone's parked in those spaces, they can get the tickets. But for the regular cars parked in regular spaces, they probably shouldn't be in. It's not quite the same thing. I don't know. I'm just trying to make sure that it's not just like, that we're doing anything different with the EV spaces than we do with any of the other spaces that people might be occupying for long stretches of time. So that it's just even across the board. Yes, you're parking in the EV, just like you would park in any space that you're not supposed to be parked in, the same things would occur. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that, we shouldn't have anything. I'm saying that it should be equitable so that, it's something that happens. Not just, because then it's like, it's the exception for the EV vehicles as opposed to other types of vehicles or other types of parking issues.
I kind of think with that, though, I think of a gas station. So you can't say parked at a gas station either. That could be an equitable issue as well. So I think the same thing for EV is it's used for a purpose. And the purpose is to charge a vehicle as you will put gas in your car. So it's not like a place where it's just like, it's just allocated for parking as opposed to there's a particular purpose for that spot.
Mr. Miser.
Yeah, just to that point, I don't really see it as just another parking spot. So I do think that special consideration should be given, similar to how we handle a handicap zone or a loading zone for a business. This is a specific set of spots for a specific purpose. And because of that, just as we have different enforcement policies for handicap parking and loading zones, I think this zone should also have different. I think it's okay for this zone to have different enforcements and don't necessarily see it as an issue of inequality.
Mr. McTiernan.
Yes, I had a question for the chief. Would this have to be posted if it's going to be towed? the towaway zone, or would we have to let people know that their cars could be towed? As a rule, don't we do that?
Yes, it would have to be posted as a tow zone. And the other thing that I would ask is if you're going to put it in the ordinance, I would ask for clarity as to when they get towed. So if it's after 5 days, the ordinance should say that after 5 consecutive days of being in that spot without moving, that the vehicle may be subject to towing. So.
Okay, I'll put that in. I just want to say to council again, maybe this is more of a policy issue. Your towaway policy might initially discourage people from using it, but I don't know. I've never, this whole EV parking is a brand new issue for municipal attorneys everywhere. So I don't know how that will work. But what I hear the chief saying is that we'll have to say that violators can't be towed. I don't think you can put on after 5 consecutive days. I don't think you want to do that or could do that. So I will put in there if council still wants that it's going to be a towaway zone, it would have to be posted.
Additional comments on this?
Yeah, just to wrap it up, I think, it's unfortunate that we would have to put that on language on there, and that we, I hope it wouldn't discourage people from using it, but I just, I fear if we don't put anything there that, they could be abused. I know not many people park over there as is, which is a good thing. It's why it's a good spot for this, but I just, we've put a lot of work and there's a lot of infrastructure being done to make this happen. And I don't want to see those spots, going to waste.
And just to throw this out there as well for your information, that the spots will be marked with signage, but in addition to signage, they're going to be, the parking spots will be painted in green paint, and there will be an EV parking only type stencil in the parking spaces. So it will be abundantly clear that these are specific spaces, and someone's not going to park there by accident and being like, oh, I didn't know it was an EV station. So I just want to throw that out there as well, that there will be adequate and abundant signage and marking. All right, ready to move on? Let's go to item G, discuss returning to in-person meetings. I know this is something we've been kind of talking about for several months. Last month, we tabled it for this month just because we wanted to look at some kind of brainstorm if there were some other locations. I know I've talked to a couple members of council about some other locations. I personally haven't found anything that I've found to be better than what we have. So I'm just going to throw out there something, and you all can respond. You can hate it, that's fine. But just to kind of start our conversation, to kind of have that catalyst, if you will. My suggestion was that we return to in-person meetings for legislative only meetings, which would be the first meetings of the month, first Wednesdays of the month, that we remain as a Zoom option for our agenda meetings, which would be meetings like this. And this is the way that Forest Hills does it, just to use an example. And that we would start this in our October, I think it's like second, sorry, I'm looking at October 4th, it looks like, meeting would be when this would begin. I don't really have a strong opinion in terms of location. I think that the intermediate school is better for our staff. So I'm really open to either of those. So those are my 2 cents. Mr. Miser.
Yeah, just before we dive into discussion, I wanted to throw my hat into the ring as far as I did say I would reach out to the Wilkins School. I did have a discussion with them. And they did say that they would be happy to host any meetings, whether it's legislative and agenda or just legislative, in their auditorium at the Wilkins School. They do provide free Wi-Fi. They're right on a bus stop. They have podiums, chairs. We would just need to tell them what setup we need, and they would set up the space for us. Technology, I do believe they have a screen and some other things, but we would have to look at the technology options, but they have offered that space free of charge to the borough to use if we so choose to use that for meetings.
Additional thoughts?
I would say, I'm ready to move back in person if that's the way that the council would like to move. I'm comfortable with it. So whatever way the council wants to move, I'm fine with it.
I would like to see if, what are the mitigation methods that are being put on whatever room we're in? Like, I'd like to know, do they have clean air stuff flowing around the Wilkins School? That'd be great. Because that was one of the issues I had with whatever classroom we were thinking about in intermediate, where we're at now. And what are the, I really like the space with Dixon, but that's because like the majority of council lives right here next to Dixon. Because it's like there. And I do like the proposal of the, legislative meeting taking place, for one in person, one online.
Go ahead, Mr. Price.
Some of us, I know Weldy Ann was there. Some of us went up to the school up on Evans Street, and Josh was there, I believe, and took a look at the auditorium up there. And I think that that's one of the viable options, although I'm really interested in what Josh is talking about tonight of being able to use Wilkins. But the auditorium up on Evans Street is huge, and people could really spread out there. But any of these sound viable to me.
Ms. Scales.
I just wanted to mention that I agree with you, Chris, in terms of us mirroring Field's method. In terms of location, I joined Bill in terms of the auditorium. I apologize, you guys, like I'm drained. I joined Bill in the fact that auditorium is well sized, but because of there may be a mobility issue and an access issue with being at the school, Wilkins may be the best location so that residents who can't get up there can come to a council meeting if they so desire. That's it.
Mr. Quinn.
So I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of Ms. Alfonso Wells. I just wanted to also note that I hope there is adequate airflow, especially with the rise in the new COVID variant. I don't know much about it, but I just want to make sure I'm safe when it comes to that.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. And I mean, honestly, both Intermediate and Wilkins probably don't have, Mr. Miser, you can correct me if I'm wrong about Wilkins, but I imagine, especially if we're, trying to upgrade that facility, they probably don't have the clean air exchangers. Dixon would, but I know the intermediate school, as Bill said, that location is very, very large. And so there is opportunities for people to be far apart from one another in the midst of that. So Mr. Miser, you got your hand up. You're still muted.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say, I can reach out to them and ask what the airflow situation is. I do think, if I remember correctly, voting there during COVID, they did have something set up in that auditorium area to circulate air out. So I don't know if they own a machine or they, bought one or what it is, but I'll check with Nicole to see, what they have. And then just to put my lid on it, even though, I did find out that Wilkins School is available, I'm not 100% in on that. I think it was very, very kind of them to offer the space and to offer it, no questions asked, free of charge. But, I would be agreeable to any of the locations we've looked at, as Bill and Weldy mentioned. We did see those other locations, and I don't think the classroom would be a good location, but the auditorium was very nice as well. So I'm open to any location, but I will follow up on the air situation at Wilkins.
Yeah, so I would just say that if we look at what's going on now, and this is, I don't have too much of a preference except for safe. Safe is my preference, right? And I just know that Dixon, because they're active and actively have those kids in there, and they do have better airflow, and it's a newer building. So and they have parking, lots of parking. And it's on the flat side, and they have handicap entrances and so on and so forth. So, but once again, my biggest concern, of course, is to make sure we have that airflow. I have to have that airflow. I have underlying conditions. I'm not trying to go out there and be in some closed up room with somebody. I need to have the airflow. I need it to be safe. And I think that if we have something that's in a building that's probably newer and has kids in it now, one would think that they have better airflow. That doesn't mean they necessarily do. That it might just be a better circumstance because they're constantly, they're trying to keep it safe for the kids actively. It's not an old building at all.
Thanks for those comments. I think this is something, I'm going to throw another proposal out there. You all can let me know what you think. I mean, it seems like we have a consensus about meeting in person once a month and virtual once a month. That provides opportunities for us to have, I mean, legally, the only meeting that we are required to have in person is our legislative meeting. We have been getting away from that because we were still under the emergency declaration. And so once we go back to in person, that in essence ends our emergency declaration because of the collapse of the borough building, council chambers and all of that. But what it doesn't specify is where it is. So we could always start somewhere. And if it doesn't, after a month or two, it doesn't feel like it fits our needs, we can always try to adjust from there. So my suggestion is given what Ms. Alfonso Wells said about air circulation, what Mr. Quinn said about, there's some unknowns about the kind of slow creep of some of the rises with the new variant. What if, Mr. Batchy, and you can let me know if you also would be okay with this. What if we scheduled our October 4th at Dixon, provided that the superintendent, Greg, I know you'd have to follow up with the school district to see if they're on board with that. We meet there for October. See how that goes, maybe meet there in November as well. And if we feel we need to change to move to someplace like Wilkins or the intermediate school, we can always make that change on the fly. But this at least gets us a starting point. So I'll shut up for a minute, but what do you all think about?
Sounds good to me.
And I'll
Sounds
follow
good
up.
to me. Two
I'll
thumbs
follow
up
up
and that's
with
some head
Dr.
nods.
Castagna.
Okay, thank you. And let's just say if that falls through, just so we don't have to bump this for another meeting, if that falls through and we cannot use that space between Wilkins School and the auditorium, do you all have a preference between those two?
I think my preference is going to depend on which one is safer. I don't know, right? So if I could get some stats on which one has better airflow, that would determine which one I would designate as second.
Well, I think that you're going to have the same airflow issue at both of them with old air conditioning systems. The intermediate school has air conditioning, so there is air being moved around in there constantly when the air conditioning's on, but they don't have the filters and the filtration like the modern systems have. And I would guess that the Wilkins School doesn't. I've never been in the auditorium of the Wilkins School, but I will say the intermediate school is probably much larger. I know it's much larger because just the footprint of the school, the Wilkins School is much smaller than where the auditorium is. So you'd have, I think it'd be safer in the Swissvale Woodland Hills Intermediate School as far as airflow and air handling.
And I'd add that if this is a space that we're using, I think it would be entirely feasible for us. Again, Mr. Batchy, correct me if I'm wrong from a budget perspective, but if we do that, if we end up having to go there or somewhere else, I think we can buy a few air filtration systems to put on the stage with us to at least be purifying the air, around everyone, but that at least provides some level of, it's not clean air, like fresh air circulation, but it will at least do, this is what dentists do, they have them in the corner of their rooms to kind of try to circulate the air and purify some of those germs out of it. That would at least provide some more mitigation than none.
Yeah, we can buy a couple of those. It won't be a budget buster.
Regarding technology, I know there had been discussions regarding having the hybrid option where council members could decide whether they wanted to be in person or remote for that. And I know if we were to pursue that, that would complicate the technology side of things more as far as having synced audio video where, you know, a good steady connection, things along those lines. Would we be assuming going back in person that the expectation would be that you are in person unless, you know, there's a serious circumstance that prohibits you from being in person?
I mean, I think that would be my preference. A lot of those boroughs provide a hybrid option in the event of illness or like vacation travel. Not just because I don't feel like coming on a particular day. So that's how most of the other boroughs do it. I do think that, like you said, the hybrid option makes it difficult, I think, to have some interactions. Maybe if we had our own space that we could customize a little bit with better technology, like at the new borough building. But I think given what we're doing, I personally feel like that would be difficult to make happen effectively.
Well, I'm glad you said illness or vacation, right? Because some of us, you know, actually when I was on vacation, I didn't make it to be here, but you know, to have that option, because sometimes you have no choice, and I think that we need to utilize the technology of 2023 and not say, oh, it's like, you know, you can't join because, you know, we have no way of we have a way of connecting people. So we need to go forward with that and allow for that option if possible. But once again, I think the majority of people would rather be, if everybody's in person, trying to be in person, unless they have some circumstance that requires them not to be.
All right, so I heard a consensus of Dixon and kind of the schedule of meetings. We haven't talked about backup place, finalize that, but it sounds like we have two options that we can continue to explore before October 4th to make happen. So let's cross the bridge of Dixon, and if that doesn't happen, then I mean, if nothing else, we can work on running some. Yeah, we'll figure that out. Let's just go one step at a time, because I think it's hard. Yeah, we feel good about that. Mr. Batch, you okay with that statement? Okay.
Well, we won't be able to cross the bridge for another 2 years, but
Well, Bill, too soon still. Yes, but hey, we made progress on that last month, so we're still going. Okay, well, that ends our agenda items. Let's move on to our departmental reports. Which is section 5. Start with 5A, Police Chief Watson.
I have nothing to report tonight, Mr. President.
Chief, do you
Yes, ma'am.
mind just briefly informing council and the public or some of the changes that we made to the police academy program opportunity?
Sure. About 2 years ago, we came up with the idea with the police committee and myself and Mr. Batchy of offering residents the opportunity for us to pay for them to attend the police academy. We would pay the fees of the police academy, which is around $5,000. You know, once they successfully completed the course. We got no applicants from Swissvale. So after discussing it with the police committee and Mr. Batchy and myself, we came up with the idea to offer it to Allegheny County residents. And we do have one applicant at this point that we will look at the next police committee meeting about giving him the opportunity to do that. So, and there would be a condition of a certain length of employment once they graduated with Swissvale as a part-time officer to kind of pay back what we paid to get them through the police academy. So it's an opportunity to bring in part-time officers and get them to stay for a little while we give them training and experience prior to them successfully getting a full-time job, either with us or with somebody else. So
I think that's phenomenal.
I think it's
good job.
Thank you. I think it's how you have to think outside the box now with the lack of applicants we have for police jobs. And the police committee and Mr. Batchy and myself, I think that was a great idea we worked through to get out there. So thank you to them.
Yeah, thanks, police committee, for continuing to be flexible and can't think where I'm looking for, but thinking outside the box, as Chief said. All right, let's move on
That's
to
all.
code and, oh, thanks. Let's move on to code and fire with Chief Wilhelm.
I actually have quite a few things to cover. It's been a busy month, both administratively and I want to highlight some upcoming training. Just to continue on the grant issues. This over the last month, I had to close out and finalize 3 grants that we had just to review them. We had the EMS grant where we bought all new heart monitors and AEDs. Or I'm sorry, the EMS grant was for other medical equipment that we got a grant for about $37,000. The 2021 AFG grant, we finally closed everything out because there was back order on some of the equipment. We got 3 new heart monitors and 5 AEDs for about $145,000. We also, I closed out the state fire grant that was due by August 31st. And that was for just 4 sets of turnout gear. And I just want to say this so that the elected officials understand, $15,000 buys only 4 sets of structural firefighting gear, meaning helmet, coat, pants, boots, gloves, and the other minor equipment that goes with it. So it's just, everything's going through the roof. It's really becoming cost prohibitive. But in total there, that was about $200,000 worth of grant funding. On August 18th, we were awarded another federal grant through the AFG program to replace 1,250 feet of 3-inch supply hose and 8 new gas meters. And it's kind of timely after what happened in Plum, that tragedy. We had thought about this. We're always looking at what we need, not what we want. And our gas meters are upwards to 20 years old. So we applied for that earlier in the year. It takes, 6 to 8 months for all the grants to go get processed. But we were just awarded that 2 weeks ago. Busy with regular code enforcement. It's that season. We've been filing several citations for people who have not rectified their issues. We also had some zoning hearings this month on August 24th. One for Airbnbs being operated in a single family district. That hearing was continued to September 21st. We also had one that requested variances for required setbacks for Regent Square for an addition to a home. That also was continued. That hearing was 3 hours long between the 2 of them. And now we have another one on September 21st. There'll be a third zoning appeal of a finding from me, the zoning officer, that somebody had done something in violation of the zoning ordinance. Also, we have a busy month upcoming here in training, and I'd like to extend this invitation to council members, but I know it's a distance you may not want to go. But on September 9th, on Saturday, I previously arranged for what's called a structural burn evolution day, which is going to be at Butler Fire Academy at Butler County Community College. And we opened that up to our first alarm mutual aid companies, including the River's Edge and Braddock, Edgewood, North Braddock, and Forest Hills. We will be doing roll-ups. There will be about 6 to 8 scenarios that day. We have 5 state certified suppression instructors that will be building scenarios and lighting fires, and we will be rolling in not knowing what we're going to encounter, and everybody's going to go through live evolutions. And it's an effort for us to work cohesively together, identify where our shortcomings may be, and to keep our skills up. But it's a good opportunity for any elected officials that might want to come up to see what it's really like and see what we do. Also on 9/13, myself, Assistant Chief Volpe, and the 3 shift commanders will be attending Commonwealth Building Officials Education Conference for our required Con Ed for our code enforcement certifications. That'll be September 13th, 14th, and 15th. On 9/19, I've been invited to participate in an IAFC webinar, again on follow-up on lithium-ion batteries, and I'll be presenting along with the Fire Department of New York Deputy Chief of Training, Frank Lieb. It's quite an honor. September 28th, we also have another session where we have Situational Awareness Matters instructor Dr. Gassaway coming in, which will be talking about training for failure and understand why our training must change and our thought process. He really gets deep into brain science and why we do what we do and how we react the way we were trained. So if we take shortcuts in training, then we end up with problems on the fire scene or the EMS scene or a police scene, whatever it may be. He teaches internationally. He's a very great instructor. Also, Manager Batchy volunteered me a few months ago to participate in the COG group, which we've been working with several managers on coming up with a fire forum for members of the COG. We have settled on a date and we are putting together the program and finalizing it, but it'll be October 18th here at Swissvale at the auditorium at the intermediate school, the Borough building. And it'll be open to all COG members and hosted by COG. Connect's going to participate as well. I've secured the state fire commissioner coming in. He's going to talk a little bit about the state of the fire service. And it's really just an educational break the ice thing for people to see the different solutions that may be available and what we have to start working towards in the future to keep providing the essential fire service that we're required to. So we're looking forward to that as well. And I think that kind of sums all that up. And in October, we have all of our full-time career staff and several part-time staff enrolled in training. We will all be participating in Norfolk Southern training. That's the best way to put it. And learning about the trains and how to deal with issues that may arise and how to mitigate those circumstances. We have several days and slots reserved with Norfolk Southern for our personnel for those days. And I think that about covers everything.
So much, Chief. You're right. That is a full schedule in the past and future. And thanks to you as well for the grant work that you're doing to provide these services to the borough. Just like Mr. Batchy as well. Both of you have done a great job, excellent job of getting us that equipment at no cost to us, but equipment that's essential for the safety of our residents and our employees. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any questions for Chief Wilhelm?
I just wanted to thank Chief for the fire department's participation in our numerous community events. Thank you guys so much for showing up.
Our pleasure.
I was just curious, Chief, is the training program, is that something that they've just started, or have they done that in the past? Or sounds like a great idea.
They've done that in the past. We sent everybody through it a few years ago. There's actually a training facility down in Pitcairn. Well, they have a yard in Pitcairn, and they actually have trains that are set up as training trains with classrooms, and they travel around the country and they host them at all their particular areas. Norfolk Southern's been doing this regularly. I think the last time we were there was right before COVID hit. We sent everybody through, and they're coming back through again. And obviously we try to seize every opportunity we can to keep updated on our training.
That sounds like an excellent program. Thank you.
It is. And that's countywide. They're going to have people from all over the county going to this training. They're here for a week, but we secured enough slots to get the majority of our people in.
Again, thanks so much for all that. Some great items coming down the works. Let's move on to 5C, Public Works. Mr. D'Ambrosio.
Good evening. Just one quick item. The streetlights on Noble and Washington Street got a lot of calls and emails over the last several weeks. We finally got Molyneux Electric to come out and repair them last week, so they're all up and running on both streets.
Thank you so much for taking care of that, Jordan. Thank you.
Probably.
Go ahead, Ms. Scales.
Thank you. Jordan, do you know where we're at on the disabled parking spaces?
We're about, I'd say, 3/4 done with them. We still have about another quarter to do.
And is that the painting of the spaces, or is that putting up the new signage?
All the signs were replaced in the winter. Winter, beginning of spring. We probably have about 25 or maybe a third of the parking spots to paint.
Okay. And I also wanted to shed light and thank Jordan for hosting our youth this year. This was your first year and the Borough of Swissvale's second year overall. Myself and Fred was able to have lunch with our youth, could have a discussion with them. So it's nice to meet them. And I'm very, very much happy that we were able to execute this program for the youth, because they really do enjoy coming to work for us. And so that was actually something I actually really enjoyed to see.
I second that one, Ian. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yeah, and it's through this I got to know Jack, who is a Woodland Hills high school student, and it just so happened that a couple weeks ago I was playing pickup soccer at the high school, and sure enough, Jack was there. So it was neat to kind of have those opportunities for cross pollination, both in the borough and through some extracurricular events as well. So yes, I echo the others of thanks, Jordan, for your hard work and making them feel welcome, putting them to work, and just providing a great opportunity for them. All right, let's move on to item 5D, manager's report. Mr. Batchy.
Thank you. Just a couple quick items. First is the police regionalization. We did submit everything we need to the state to get that started. There was a lengthy form with a lot of questions on, budgets, calls, number of calls for service, personnel and stuff that we completed last week and were submitted to the state. Braddock Hills completed theirs at the end of last week also. So I did get an email from the state today asking for some proposed dates for a meeting. So I will be reaching out to the police committee tomorrow or Friday to get some dates that work for all of you, so that we can have that kickoff meeting with DCD and the project consultant, who will be one of their peer consultants. So that is moving forward. And once we have that initial meeting, I think what they try to do is like a monthly regular recurring meeting so we can keep the project moving forward. Next thing is we did have a DPW committee meeting on last Friday. Two main things we talked about was paving. Number one was paving. We have $250,000 that we allocated from the ARPA funds for paving. Part of that's going to be used for Mansion Place. Part of that a little bit for Varsity Road. And then the rest, we have a lot of space, a lot of places around the borough, which I can circulate the list. Where we need to do 200 feet, 175 feet, 150 feet that have just fallen apart. But with the time of the year it being, it's not a good time to put it out for bid, because people are just going to bid it high and they probably won't get it done this year anyway. So what we discussed with the DPW committee is we're looking to bid this maybe in December or January and award a contract no later than February, with a deadline on it that they would have to complete the work by, say, June 1st. So once the weather breaks in April, they could get to, we could be one of their first contracts for this and for the LSA grant, to repave the areas of Vernon Street, Roslyn, Noble, Waverly, Dixon, and Center. So we can, we can move forward with all that. We'll have all the bid specs ready for bidding in December, with an award, like I said, hopefully no later than February 1st. And then the last thing is just a reminder to all the residents, the borough building is closed on Monday, so there will be a delay in trash and recycling pickup all week. With the exception of Friday, recycling will be picked up on Friday, garbage will be picked up on Saturday. And I'm sorry, the one other thing we did discuss at the DPW committee meeting was today was our last day collecting the trash in Homestead. Munhall did provide a price significantly cheaper than ours that they decided to go with. So yesterday was our last day. There will be some personnel implications, which we'll be getting with the personnel committee and the DPW committee to figure out, what we're going to do moving forward. But we've had some employees off, injured. We've had some issues where we haven't had all the spots filled. So as I explained to the DPW committee, we can comfortably keep the people through September, but around October, we're going to have to eliminate 2 positions in that department. And one thing I know, Braddock Hills is looking for DPW workers. So I'm going to try and work with them. I did talk to the manager about that, and they are looking for 2 employees. So I'm going to try and work with them to see if we can maybe relocate our guys up to there to keep them working. So that is all I have.
Questions, comments for Mr. Batchy? All right. We'll move to the president's report. I've got 2 things for us. The first is that we will be meeting in executive session tonight following this meeting for issues of personnel. And the other thing is I am really excited, as we talked about earlier, this EV charging ordinance. We're getting real close to this project being done. If you've been over by Aurelius Scheuer Avenues, you've seen that they've been working. They put a new pole in. They I think just finished today the ground infrastructure, backfilling that. Next week, I think going to be finishing the concrete pads, having installation of our units. We're getting real close. So 2 really exciting things that are happening as a result of that. The first is September 20th. Connect is doing a kind of an EV tour. They're meeting in Braddock Hills, taking an electric bus to Wilkinsburg to kind of explore some EV stuff. And then they're going to be taking an electric bus to Swissvale to see our project and, be able to have, we have a resident actually already who has an electric car that's going to show how this curbside situation would work. I mean, the more we've been having conversations with Duquesne Light and others, that this is kind of new. This is innovative. That's the word I was looking for earlier as well. Innovative. It's innovative in the way of having not just chargers in like a parking lot somewhere, but curbside chargers that can be used for the public. So that is going to be on September 20th. Council, others are welcome to sign up for it if you want to. I think there will be some info circulating about that soon. But the other thing that I want to invite everyone to is on September 28th. It's a Thursday at 1 p.m. We're going to be doing our ribbon cutting ceremony to launch these chargers. So everyone is, from the public, council, whoever is cordially invited to that Thursday, September 28th at 1 p.m. for our ribbon cutting ceremony. And that's all I got. Let's move on to solicitors report. Mr. McTiernan, go ahead.
Yeah. President, other than the parking, I do appreciate the guidance from council on some of those details, and we'll turn that around for the upcoming project. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, so we can move on to category 7, which is other new business. Does anyone have any new business that they would like to bring up tonight before we adjourn? Just kind of feel like a going once, going twice. Give folks time to unmute if they need to. All right, well then I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:19 p.m.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? See y'all later. Have a great night. And watch that supermoon.
Happy Labor Day.